Greetings, gregarious gamers, it's I, Dexum, and here I am with the Loki Omega Trial Guide. So something that happened with Loki is that they released him a little early on consoles, but mainly the PS4 version, so I had a chance to take Loki out for a spin. He's a very peculiar yet powerful character. He's a mix of melee, magic, ranged, sword damage. He's got a little bit of everything going on, including fire and ice powers, as well as light and dark powers. From the beginning, one of the things I liked a lot about Loki is that he has an inherent stealth on his dash power. But one of the things I didn't really like so much about him is that a lot of his talents and a lot of his other abilities infuse his main attack, Graham, his sword, with a lot of different magic types, so you can gear him to do fire or ice damage, or light or dark damage, which makes him a really versatile player, but it also kind of makes him kind of a tough player to navigate and understand. For ease of use, I went primarily light damage and geared around summons, and of course I like to stay ranged when I can, even though he probably will end up doing more damage in a melee situation. So what I ended up slotting is his regular staff blast and hard light spikes, which permafrost spikes turns into it with the talent in the 3rd tier, which increases your light power damage by 10%. And I didn't really go with otherworldly blast, primarily because for the trial, I really wanted to focus on summon damage and getting the enemies off of me. Because of this, another ability that I used was Eternal Flame, which is a really good damage over time that you can throw down up to 3 times on different enemies. And it really comes in handy, especially whenever you use it with Light Beam, which Illusionary Projection turns into with the 4th tier talent that I chose. Because Light Beam summons illusions but keeps them kind of far away from some of the enemies, many of the enemies will end up spreading out, and Eternal Flame is really good to hit all the different areas where enemies might be and do a lot of damage over time to them. Because I'm kind of working towards more summon damage, the 1st tier I chose was Maker of Mischief, which increases your base damage to summons by 25% and increases the summon duration by 25% and a maximum illusions by 3. Also, every time you use your dash, it will create another illusion. This really comes in handy with the 2nd tier, Refracting Burst, which turns Meteoric Illusion into Refracting Ruin. And your illusions won't self-destruct whenever you use Refracting Ruin, but it does do a lot of AoE damage wherever they are. And again, this works really good. It all synergizes with Hard Light Spikes, which makes enemies more vulnerable to your illusions. And by doing this, it will make the trials very easy because most of the enemies won't be targeting you. You'll be stealth a lot of the time, and your illusions, when they appear, will aggro the enemies and get them off of you. And finally, the last talent that I chose in the last tier is Searing Embers. Now, Searing Embers in general changes Spirits of the Dead into Searing Embers, which fires 3 projectiles per shot, and enchants Graham with Muspelheim magic, which is fire damage. But all in all, I didn't really have a use for it because I wasn't using that ability. But it did increase fire damage power by 10%, which is something that I did use. This build may not do the most damage out of the box, but what it will do is make sure that you can pass the trial quickly and easily, because most of everything you're using has to do with your illusions. So enemies won't be targeting you, you'll have a lot of stealth, you'll be creating your illusions and detonating them. And of course, one of the best abilities that Loki has is his Enthrall ability, which is a crowd control that turns enemies on your side. And it also does some pretty good damage over time. And even though it has a 12-second cooldown, it does have a 6-second duration and a low spirit cost. So whenever it pops, you can use it on either really heavy enemies, like gold mobs, or you can use it on the bosses themselves. Even if it doesn't last the full 6 seconds on them, it will definitely get a few hits on the lesser enemies and really help you out to clear the level. For the synergies, I kind of went all over the board because Loki has so many different powers. So I went fire damage, magic, some melee, some ranged, mostly summon powers, critical damage, critical hit multiplier, damage versus slowed, health on hit, intelligence, and of course the reduction to power spirit cost. For the infinity points, of course I put 50 points in the soul gem, which gives you the automatic med kit, which is always a must when you do these trials. And the rest I put into the mind gem, mostly for intelligence points, but the rest I just put into critical damage. And finally, gearing. I really went mostly critical and brutal strike chance, and then however much damage I can get. But I didn't farm for any gear. I opened about 10 shield supply boxes just so I could get whatever cosmics I can and put them on, and I happened to get pretty good rolls on some of them. But I also didn't end up getting cosmic pieces at level 60 across all slots. So I ended up using some lower tier cosmic pieces that I got from opening shield supply boxes a little early. I also used a regular broken crown that I got from beating Loki once through the story, a complete relic of Xandar, a Cherubus Neotum, which I got from one of the shield supply boxes, and also I got lucky and got a Ziggurat of Kargul, which really came in handy too. But as usual, the saving grace ended up being my catalyst, which gave me 3 seconds of invisibility whenever I use my medkit, and I really think that's a must, even though Loki already has some inherent stealth powers. I also had a Curse Medallion, which gave me plus 617 critical hit rating. I don't usually use the Curse Medallion in these situations. I would have much preferred using a Gorgon Medallion or something that may have aided a little bit more, but this is the only medallion that I had decent critical hit rating that also had any offense to magic powers, and I didn't want to farm for a Gorgon Medallion or a Pyro Medallion that had critical hit or brutal strike rating. So I just went with what I had. For the most part, I had pretty bad rolls, and I wasn't max gear across all my slots. So if for some reason you find yourself having a little trouble using the build, spend a little bit more time gearing, and I know you'll get by it with no problems. And that's about it. Loki is definitely a fun character to play. There's a lot going on with him, and he's versatile with many build options. Let me know how you guys do when you play him. Let me know if you pass the Omega trial. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in game.